can let me go. Yeah. Better recording. Okay, on top of Kufmam Daled, and we will start the third line from the top. Towards the end of that line. The Rebbe says, gives a mashal to the Indian of Islapshus. He brought down the Indian, the Gemara says, Basora Dvorim, that the Gemara was created utilizing 10 things. Again, everybody, people ask the question of Yesh Me'ayin. Yesh Me'ayin is a different thing. This is, the 10 things are how the world was actually designed and brought into full function. Among the creations that are in the world, there are things that relate more closely to one or the other of the 10 things that are involved in creating the world. Even though all 10 things are involved in bringing out the metzius of a presence of world, still there is a unique relationship between different things with some specific of the 10 qualities. These differences are not in the essential presence in creation, in the Yesh Me'ayin element. These differences are in the Hisgalus, in the expression that comes through from these 10 different things. Might as well start at the end of the first line. There's no waste of time there. It's a moment. It's explained elsewhere. Marshal al zeh, a marshal for this union, that there are different ways how an union is niskal. A very simple marshal. K'moyas, for example, echod hamtzavel uzoloses davar. One is directing, is asking, is telling somebody else to do something for him. This directive, harei zeh b'keva dibur, that is accomplished through utilizing voice and speech. This is how the directive comes through to the recipient. V'chein, and likewise, utilizing the similar qualities, but in a different circumstance completely. When he speaks words of affection, or he speaks words of intellect, there too you're utilizing the same method of communication, of voice and speech. So here you have two instances utilizing the same method of communication. And yet, these two actions, these two experiences are totally dissimilar one from the other. You're speaking, and the voice is a voice, the same thing. But it's a completely different speech and completely different voice. Why? Because in the command, in the directive, please do this for me. There, the mashpia, or the one who initiates the communication, is not nitfas, is not grasped, meaning is not absorbed with his koiches to a full extent. For example, I want to put this into perspective. You ask somebody, please pass me the siddur. Pass me the siddur means because you want to daven. But when you ask him to pass him the siddur, you don't tell him, please pass me the siddur so I can daven. Please pass me the siddur. The purpose and the ultimate significance of passing the siddur is not communicated in the initial request, please pass me the siddur. So that in this statement, please pass me the siddur, the significance and what's going on in the mind of Mashpia is not communicated. This Mashpia is not grasped. He is not contained in this directive. All you have is the means of communication. That's it. The one who receives the directive is also not nitfas, is not absorbed, is not contained, does not relate to this directive. Rak only lishmoya tzivur. He is involved only to hear the command, and that's it. He does not recognize, does not delve into trying to understand what this tzivur is about. So here we have a speech that communicates a message and brings about an action without the spirit involved in this whole action and in the command. Next line. But then when he speaks words of affection, this is the other example, the other part of that example, it's also the same speech. But there, the mashpia, the one who is expressing it, who speaks, is contained in this, with all his keches. I'm sorry, with his midas. Shaboy be his gallows, where his midas of affection are expressed, can be his gallows are revealed. Similarly, the recipient, the one who receives the directive, the one who receives these words of wisdom or these words of affection, he also is nitfas. Here I think we may be able to recognize the meaning of nitfas. He is contained in this. He is grasped by it. He is drawn to it. With his sense and with his sensitivity. Shenir gash boy, which
to
means.
remain on this call, press 1. Returning to the conference room.
Shenir gash boy, that in him, in the makabel, the one who receives these words of wisdom, is sensed, felt by him, koyach ha-mashpia, the koyach and the life force of the mashpia, umiskar ve'ilov al-idei zeh, and he comes close to him, al-idei zeh, through this, as a result of this interaction. Because what's transmitting is not just words and a piece of information. What's transmitted was a certain real sense of the life of the mashpia. U'b'yoyser hu, at the greater level, this is be'hashpoas haseichel. In the case of hashpoas haseichel, when he bestows, he's transmitting to him the dinya of seichel. Shenitfosim bozeh b'yoyser, where in the communication of seichel, they get contained, they get involved in this. B'yoyser, to a great extent, to an extreme, to a great extent. B'bchinas hislapshus v'hisgalus. In a hislapshus manner means you cannot understand the seichel unless you actually focus on it. You cannot think of something else and the same thing understand the seichel. You have to be mislabish. Mislabshus means, when you talk about a seichel, you have to project the reality behind the seichel. So therefore you become part of that reality, along with the one who is teaching you the seichel. With his galus, and then of course the seichel comes to full expression. The hakoil and all that, who b'kol v'dibur. All of that is transmitted, is accomplished through voice and speech. This voice and speech is the very same voice and speech that can express a very simple directive without bringing out the life force behind it, or bringing out the whole life force behind it. I'd like to take another half a minute and point out this union that in seichel you grasp b'yoyser. B'yoyser means to a greater extent. The reason that why seichel says you grasp b'yoyser. In seichel, you say a seichel 2 times 2 equals to 4. So 2 times 2 equals to 4. You're still talking just about the facts that the seichel that are expressed in the words. But that is not, as we explained many times, this is not what seichel is about. Closer, even a very superficial, it's still something which it does involve a seichel. If you say to someone, to walk to 770, there are 2 ways to do it. But the better way to go is via this route rather than this route. The easier way, there's less hills or less interference and whatever it is. There, you're not just speaking about the streets that you're covering. There you're presenting to him the whole panorama. How do you get from this place to this place? And he gets a picture of what he's covering, of the area. You're talking about something real, not just talking about turns and twists. You're presenting a complete area, a complete environment, a complete neighborhood, and there you are describing various aspects how you negotiate this neighborhood. The idea of a neighborhood is a seichel thing. It's a sikhli thing. It is not something that you experience by touch or even by sight. This is seichel. Seichel recognizes that there is correlationship between this street and this street. And seichel recognizes why the houses are built on this side and not on this side. This is a seichel. So seichel, no matter what you explain, if you explain a very simple message, how you get from point 1 to point 2, you're presenting a complete overview of the area that you're covering. Inevitably. That's seichel. So when you're communicating a seichel, then the relationship is a much greater than even in midas, because then you're presenting to him a whole background for what you're telling him, something that is not part of the action, something that involves a seichel aspect beyond words. Okay. And yet, the seichel also is communicating using the same method, which is called sound, voice, and speech. So we have two situations where the same method, sound and speech, are utilized to accomplish something. Yet, there's a phenomenal difference between these two experiences. In the case of a directive, just give me this, there is nothing coming through in the sound of voice but this directive. It's not part of the mashpia, a seichel or a midah.
It's not so stripped down. I mean, there is less, but it's not completely devoid of relationship. Like we have in the Hayom Yom, or wherever we have the mashal of the Chacham speaks to the simple man. It's by virtue of that simple request that they're joined.
Yeah, okay. Follow through in this Hayom Yom. The specific aspect of this Hayom Yom is that the scholar asks the simpleton to do something for him. If he gives the simpleton directive, how do you get there? That's a completely different thing. This we're talking. He's asking him to do something for him. That creates a relationship with him. The simpleton can do something for the Chacham. That really definitely raises him up. So here we have the whole discussion of the
To remain on this call, press 1.
The whole discussion of the sound and so forth is in order to explain a statement prior to that, when it says, there are 10 things that with which Rebbe created his world. So even though all 10 things are needed to create the reality, still within that reality itself, there are things that are representing one of the 10 things more than others. Chochmah, some things represent Chochmah, some things represent Bina, and so forth. And that the motion for that is you have the koyach of speech, sound and speech, and the sound and speech are carrying a very simple message, or they're carrying an internal sense, and the seichel of the mashpia. The same speech. So as far as seichel, he is nitfas. He is grasped. He is contained therein. As we said, it's in, you cannot, in order to understand, I'm repeating this again because I'd like you to understand that. To understand the seichel, you have to step out from your world. You have to step into a different world, a different reality, where the seichel originates from. Prior to the seichel being created as a seichel. This is where the seichel, this is where how you understand the seichel. We always say, do you understand? What does it mean, do you understand? Explain something, do you understand? Understanding does not mean I know how to put these things together. I have the technical structure. Understanding means I understand where you're coming from. I know what you're talking about. That's a different world.
I know how it originates.
Does that help you?
Yes.
How would it help you?
To understand.
How do you know how you don't know anything how it is? You know where it's coming from, not how it originates. How it originates means what caused it to come out. Where it comes from is not, it's not the same thing. This water in the cup comes from a source of water. That's where it's coming from. But how does it get here? And why is it in the cup? That's not the same as saying this is where it comes from. All right. Okay, so we have 5 lines from the end of the top section of Kuf Lamed Dalet. The line begins with the word deep. So the Rebbe demonstrated that you have two, and the same method used to transmit a message, and yet what is being transmitted in both of these instances are completely different. In one case, you're transmitting a stripped down message. In one case, you're transmitting a life force. V'lochein, let's conclude it. V'lochein, and this is the reason, and thus, hatzivahu, a command comes b'kol rom. The command comes b'kol rom, with a raised voice. The haino, which means he's gabras hakoyim. His gabras hakoyim means that the coil, the sound, is overpowering. We'll come back to this in a moment. Hashpoas haseichel, whereas in hashpo of seichel, ein tzorich liyis b'kol rom. Hashpoas haseichel does not need that it should be with a raised voice. The other Rabbe, to the contrary. Divrei Chachamim benachas nishmoi. Divrei Chachamim, words of the wise, benachas nishmoi, are listened, are heard better when it is in a peaceful manner. And the Rebbe explains v'hainu, which means to say, the sham iker hu hakoil. In the case of a tzivul, of a command, the principal force and that enables the command is hakoil, is the sound. Or b'hashpoas ha-seichel, and the transmission of seichel, hoyiker hapnimi hoyiker. There the main principle is hapnimi, what is contained in the seichel, in the coil. Not the sound, but what's contained. Shu ha-seichel, it's a seichel. So here we have demonstrating utilization of exactly the same method, same means, and yet what you get and what's being transmitted are two very different things. And it is noticeable by identifying what is being emphasized in one, what's being emphasized in the other. To speak, you have to have sound and you have to have words. In a command, the sound is the overwhelming, is the primary inyan. In Chochmah, the content is the primary, the words. So you have and this is, so coming back, this is eventually, it will come back to coming back, that Rebbe created the world, his world with 10 things. These 10 things are not equally distributed. There are things that relate to Chochmah, there are things that relate more to Bina, and so forth. Even though all 10 are involved in the creation, in everything. Just as, in the case of these two different methods of speech, the whole aspect of speech is contained in both of them. You can't scream a command without saying what the command is. You can't transmit a seichel without making a sound. All the aspects of the sound and the speech are involved, but there is a different emphasis of different aspects of it. This fact, this principle, the emphasis, they're different. You're picking and speaking in different aspects. For emphasis, this goes into the category of hishlapshus. Islapshus means to bring out a full impact, a full significance of what I'm saying. That means Islapshus. And there is a difference. In Islapshus, in Seichel, the emphasis is on the Seichel and what's contained, and therefore the words come in a soft sound. In a command, the main thing is the command, the sound, the emphasis. Yeah, I really want you to do it. So then the sound and the power of the sound is what's expressed. And all of this is to explain the union that we said before. Okay, towards the end of the third line from the bottom. In similar manner, who lemailo bo'asor dvorim. It is in mile above asor dvorim in 10 things that Chacham the Gemara said asor dvorim bo HaKadosh Baruch Hu lomi. Shezehu. This in the asor dvorim, as we said, all 10 things are involved in the creation, and the creation is altogether yesh me'ayin. But it comes to 10 things. Shezehu mashabobi hislapshus. Shabobi b'chinas hislapshus. The 10 things are identifying the hislapshus element. In other words, what is the emphasis? How is it being transmitted? V'yesh b'zeh chilukim b'nivroi. In this inyan of Yislapshus, there are differences among the different nivroim, different creatures. Me'yez madrego, and the difference is me'yez madrego, from what madrego iker mekoiram v'havusa is the principle of their source, and how did they come to be. From kozeh who Yislapshus for his galus. According to the compensate to the madrego where this nivro comes from, this is the degree to which is his lapsus and his galus of the command. The solid for either chokhmah or bina and so forth. So there are different madregos in different ways that an union can express itself. Different aspects of the union that can be identified. It could be the chokhmah part of it, the bina part of it, and so forth. Even though the koyach itself is exactly the same action. Okay. Now we come in, so to speak, to the crux of the whole discussion. We said before, koyach hatnuah is the lowest koyach. This thing that koyach hatnuah is the lowest koyach does not mean that the koyach hatnuah only has the lowest aspect. The koyach hatnuah represents the entire spectrum of a human thought and seichel. But there's a different emphasis. A different emphasis of the various things. And this one Rebbe says, except that, klolus koyach hatnuah, the overall, the all-inclusive aspect of the koyach hatnuah, hu koyach achrin shebenefesh, is the less and the final, the lowest koyach in the nefesh. Even though the koyach hatnuah includes also the ability to write. And you can write the divrei chokhmah. It's also part of the koyach hatnuah. So how do you say the koyach hatnuah is the lowest? Is, as such, it is the lowest koyach. Even though you can be mislabish, seichel in koyach hatnuah, and midas in the koyach hatnuah. And therefore, in every action, that's not the act. It is what part of the act is preoccupying a person. And in a throw, the part of the act of the koyach that occupies a person in a throw is a lower aspect than in writing. Even though the koyach itself is the same koyach. All right? This is the point in this whole discussion.